Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for another time that we get to come together. We pray that you would be with us in our conversation, that you would show us something that would absolutely blow our minds. Would you show up, show out, and rock our world? In Jesus' name, amen. Let's get it.
If I call you bro, that means I love you, bro. That means I'll go to war with you.
Fire, baby.
The reason why you need to know your identity is because when you know who you are, people don't get to define it for you. When I tell you guys who you have in your circle is important.
You're listening to the Bros to Men podcast with Cameron Persad, Jeff T. Osborne, and Roy Rand.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode
Bros to Men
of the Bros to
go.
Men show, man. We're so excited that you guys are here with us on the Bros to Men podcast. For everybody who has followed with us and continue to follow us, we appreciate y'all. Thank you for the love. Welcome to the family. And for all the new eyeballs that are here on our show, we want to let you know that we are always bringing you content that inspires action. So by the time we're done, our desire is that you would have some form of action. You would be inspired to get you to think, to become the highest and best version of yourself. And with me, I got my brothers here in the lab. Cam, Debs, what up, baby? How y'all feeling, man?
Feeling good, man. Do this.
We here, and as always, we got our producer Solomon in the building. Solomon, what up, my man?
Solomon,
I'm here. How you guys doing?
Come on. We got Solomon, the producer, in the building. So listen, I'm not even going to waste any time. We going to hop into it. It is probably one of the most, most talked about topic when it comes to life, when it comes to where we're going. I've almost got some trepidation when it comes to talking about this because you like that big old SAT word?
Hit him with it. Come on, bro.
Trepidation. You know what I'm saying?
What? I'll spell it.
Don't ask me to spell it. I'm just going to tell you. But I feel a certain way about this topic because I feel like there are so many gurus that claim they understand what we're about to talk about. So as a disclaimer, everything that we share on this podcast is just what has worked for us. No need to start shooting all this text and hate down there saying you missed this and you missed that. If you got any problems, I'm going to give you Solomon's email and then you can message Solomon and kind of iron it out.
I will gladly listen.
So here's what we're going to talk about. You ready for this, fellas?
Come on, let's go, bro.
What is it?
We're going to talk about today the power of finding your purpose.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the power of finding your purpose. What is purpose? What does it look like? I can't find it. We touched on it a little bit when we talked about the power of building your brand. We talked about it a little bit when we understand time. But for somebody watching this, there are millions and millions of people, billions, right, of people that don't understand purpose. I'm going to read the definition of purpose, and I want y'all to let's start diving into why do you think this thing is such a scary topic for a lot of people to talk about. Here's the definition of purpose, okay? The definition of purpose that I pulled up in the New Oxford American Dictionary says purpose is the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. I'm going to read it one more time so y'all hear this, okay? Purpose is the reason for which something is done or created or for which something exists. It's the reason why you do something, and it is the reason why something was created or why something exists. Now, before we go into it super deep, why do y'all think, just off the top of your heads, everything we talk about is just us having a conversation. Why do you think this idea of purpose is such a difficult or challenging topic for people to discover, number one, or people to actually talk about?
Because it's hard to listen to who created it. For which it was created. So who created you, right?
Okay.
And if you ain't listening, if you can't tune in, if you can't lock in and get into some stillness to where you can hear his voice,
Right.
you're never going to be led to where you need to go to know what you're created for so that you can achieve your purpose.
Referring to God.
Referring to God.
Yeah.
And going based off the definition, there's a quote about a hammer. It's like, to a hammer, the whole world is a nail. So there's some there's some clues in what your purpose is based on what you always got to do. So me is like, I'm always trying to teach something.
Mhm.
And it's like, people be like, man, Roy, you always trying to like teach. Shut up. To the whole world,
Yeah.
that's what it looks like, a place to where I can learn and teach.
Yeah.
So there's a clue just coming right off back, like how you can find your purpose is how the world looks to you. That's how God has made you.
Mm.
But other than that, you got to tune in, you got to listen, you got to know what he's made you for.
What you
Fire.
think, Ken?
To answer your question, I think a lot of people have like hesitancy and fear around that word because there's like this misconception you have to get it right the first time.
Ooh.
Like,
Okay.
if you ask me, like what I felt my purpose was at 18 years old, it's probably changed 10 times from
Yeah.
where I'm at now, about to be 37 years old in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when there's like this fear, people are like, I don't know what my purpose is. I think a lot of times the reason why they don't know is because they're afraid to like step in to something that could be a possibility, right?
Yeah.
Like this may be it, but I'm not sure if it's it. So I'm not gonna step into it or try to see if it's it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you gotta experience and dabble and be in different groups and be in different circles and switch industries and leave the 9 to 5 and build a business. I think that's part of the process, which I think scares a lot of people.
TD Jake said, everything that I've learned in my life and everything I've become, I've stumbled into it.
Yep.
Everything that I've ever recognized as a purpose, he goes, I stumbled into it. He said, I didn't start off saying I'm going to be a movie producer.
Yeah.
He said, I stumbled in it because I just love to tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you said, bro. I think that is so true. That oftentimes we are afraid of stumbling. We're afraid of making steps. And that's the reason why we don't step at all.
Facts.
I'm so afraid of, man, what if it doesn't work out? Then I've done it. You said something in our episode about building your brand, I think it was, where we talked about the brand of you, right? You said people are afraid to fail in public.
Yeah, they're afraid to fail in front of other people.
Mm-hmm.
They're not afraid to fail. They just don't want other people
Other people to
see
know.
it.
Yeah. That's real. You know, I think like people feel if it's my purpose, I'm gonna be an expert or professional in it right away.
Yeah.
Like if it was my purpose, it wouldn't be challenging or difficult. I would find immediate success in it. That's not the realm. You know, that's not reality, bro. You know, like if you look at anyone who's had massive success in any area or a business, they didn't make $1 billion their first year in it. You know, like we see these old pictures of Bezos, right, from Amazon, in the garage, and he got Amazon written on the back. Like wealthiest dude, or one of the wealthiest men in the world, but he didn't make billions his first 2 years, 3 years, 5 years in business. Like it's a journey and a long process. And I think a lot of times we have this false narrative in our minds. Like I'll know when I'm in my purpose because it'll come effortlessly. Like I'll just be a millionaire right off the bat, and everything will come without effort, and it won't be stressful, and you know it won't cause me to get a divorce, or it's not my purpose if it breaks up my what. You know what I mean? Like that's not the way it works many times.
A lot of it's the proof too. When we're young, we get proof that maybe something isn't our purpose, but it may be. For example, I was reading this story about a fighter pilot. When he was a kid, he jumped off the couch and he fell and busted his head. And they were like, yo, this kid is crazy. He's jumping off stuff. He thinks he can fly. But later on, he ended up becoming a fighter pilot. So that was his purpose. So sometimes we may stumble because we don't yet have the skill to make our purpose look exactly how it's supposed to look in the moment.
I love that.
But
bro.
that inner inclination to fly was always in him. He just needed the skill, some time, get in the military. Then he ended up being a fighter pilot. So I think sometimes we feel like something's our purpose, and then we go to do it and we aren't good at it, or we stumble, and then we have that slight trauma, for lack of better terms, and then we might quit. But even if you quit, like the TD say this, he said, when you have a purpose, not even you can stop it. So you're always going to get back to it, but it's just compressing that time and figuring it out faster.
I love that.
I think it's such an interesting concept to say that fighter pilot jumped off, he bumped his head, and then they were like, oh, look, that boy, he's crazy, he doing this. And it's like, man, well, I was flying, but the fact that he bumped his head Somebody could be like, yo, that ain't it no more.
Right.
And I think when it comes to purpose, similar to what you said, oftentimes we jump out and we have that moment where it feels like we're flying. And because we hit our head, we think that it's the wrong thing.
Right.
Yep.
And not knowing that building purpose or discovering purpose, that's why they say it's discovering your purpose. Right? And discovering your purpose is not outside of you, it's what's inside of you. That's what I've learned. The greatest journey that we will ever take in our life is the journey inside of us.
Yep.
The greatest journey that we will ever take in our life is discovering what God placed and crammed inside of us as far as our giftings and our talents and our abilities. And we're going to spend the entirety of our life pulling those things out to figure out what God has done and what he's placed inside of us.
Yeah.
I love how the Bible says, you said this, that it says finding the thing that we were created for. And I believe that when it comes to purpose, God created us to bring him honor and glory in everything that we do. The Bible also says in Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans that I have for you, plans to give you a life and a future, plans to not harm you and not to give you death, right? And so when you look at those types of things, and that's not specifically in that manner, but just paraphrasing that phrase, it means that God says, I know the plans that I have for you. If I'm going to try to figure out what I was created for, you got to go back to the owner's manual. If you got a car, if you got a vacuum cleaner, if you got something, whatever it is, you got a new computer, you got a new phone. In order for you to understand and maximize all those things, you got to go back to the manual because the person who created that phone wrote a manual for all of the capabilities of what you're supposed to do. And I think when we dive into the word of God, when we dive deeper into that, he begins to show us like the likeness and the image that we've been created in. And the more I spend time with God, the more he begins to show me through trials, through obstacles, what he actually made and what he put in. You got a brand new truck.
Yeah.
And we in this truck, and I pull up, I'm like, okay, this is nice, man. It's got some letters on the side of it. I won't say what it is on the side of this truck, but unless you know like what type of truck this is. We were on the freeway and we were driving and somebody was kind of taking a little slow and you like, man, I got to move over, but this dude ain't moving. You pulled over and you popped that sucker into, gave it some gas and that just said, whoa. And I was like, hey, yo. It wasn't until you were in a moment where you had to utilize what was inside of that truck, which was that engine, that you recognize what you're capable of. And I feel like sometimes and many times our purpose is only revealed through all the trials and the tribulations we go through that lets us know, okay, you know what? I value this. Or man, I realized when I was this way, I learned this or I learned that, and kind of bring it more into context. I remember when I was younger, it hurt me to see kids live below means different than other kids.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would take my Christmas money or my birthday money and I would get the kids shoe size and then I would go buy them shoes because I never wanted a kid to go without or their value to diminish because they felt like they didn't have what it took to be able to measure up.
Yeah.
And so for me, that kind of sparked that purpose in my life that says, okay, their hints are there. You talked about the hints are there. It may not be clear, but the hints were there. Talk about, fellas, how do you there may be some hints for people that are watching and hints for people who are trying to figure out how to go. Like, how do you recognize the hints in your life?
I think you got to move. Like, I like to simplify things, right? So I just say move. I mean, I'll tell this story that I read. I don't remember what coach it was, but he had talked about in this interview how growing up, he was like fascinated with football. Like he just wanted to play catch and he'd walk to school with a football on his arm and he was like, I'm going to the NFL and anyone who loves something this much has to be great in it, right? Like I'm destined to excel in this.
Yeah, yeah.
And he got to high school and like his first practice, bro got cracked, career over. Coach came and was like, hey, I don't think it's a sport for you. Like you should probably check out maybe baseball. You know, you look like you might be kind of quick, maybe look in the track, but I don't think football is it for you.
Right.
So the crazy thing is, he said in his first practice, he broke his leg, right? So he's in the trainer room, and while he's in the trainer room, the offensive coordinator is in there writing diagrams and plays, and he's watching film. So as the trainer is addressing his leg, he starts asking this dude questions like, so this how you guys come up with plays? He's like, yeah, we watch film and we do this. So he fell in love with this process of the game, the behind the scenes. Dude went on to become an offensive coordinator at the D1 college level. He went on to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL. And now he's in the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Fame coach. I just can't think of his name off the top of my head, right? But the message in this story is that I was infatuated with football, but my purpose was never to be a football player.
Ugh.
But because of this purpose and this passion and this fire that I have for the game, I just got myself around it. It's like, and if I could just get myself there and be amongst these people, I will find somewhere or something in this game that I can excel at. For him, it wasn't being a player. But because he learned the back end of the game, he went on and made millions and won these games. And I think he's in the Hall of Fame as a D1 coach. He's in the Hall of Fame as an NFL coach. So it's just like, to me, what that symbolizes, like, you have to take action. I think if you're thinking about something constantly, it's on your mind, you have this crazy interest in it, you find yourself looking into it in your downtime, get around it.
Yeah.
And I think it may not be in the role that you think you're going to excel in, but I think you'll find something where you'll kind of get in where you fit in, if that makes sense.
What are those hints? I think what's coming to me is, what can you not stop doing?
Yeah, boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Dips.
What can you, no matter what, you just like, I gotta, you know, some people who might see something dirty, they gotta put it together, right? Maybe you might be doing something in design. And sometimes your purpose could be something new where something old leads you to that.
Yeah.
But like competition, like I can't stop not wanting to love competition, watching it, starting it. And it's not even like a negative thing. I just like to compete. I love to watch people compete, and I love to have a adversary who is better than me. I love to have that, right?
Yeah.
So when can you not stop doing? And then also, you know, coaching, man. Like, my dad was able to see hints that I didn't see. You know, are you around someone who can see that? And if nobody telling you that proactively, ask them, like, what do you see me doing? Like, what is something you see about me where you like, you would be very good at that, right? Because a lot of times things that we're good at, we're scared of, and we don't think we're good at them. Like, I tell a friend Whitney all the time, like, you would be such a good actor. She's like, I could never act. Oh my gosh, that's so scary. And I'm like, you have no idea how good you are. She can play roles and change her face and do emotions. And I'm like, yo, you sleep on your purpose, but we're gonna see in the future. So what can you not stop doing? And maybe ask people, like, what can you see me doing, or what am I good at, or what's something that you would trust me to do if we're in a
Seek counsel.
Seek counsel.
You know, and I say that because the transitional point in my career and what I do was, I literally went into my director's office one day, asked him if he had 5 minutes. He invited me in. I sat at his desk. He said, "What's up?" And I said, "I just want to ask you, what do I need to start doing so that I could be on that side of the desk?" Like, I can read the books, I can Google whatever, but I want to take from your experience, share your story with me. I just want to know, what do I need to do? You've known me for 3 years now. What skills do I need to develop so that I can be one day sit on that side of the desk instead of, I want to be the employer, not just the employee, right? I want to be the admin.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, I know you're very busy. You don't have the time to maybe coach me every day, but if you have the time, can you just guide me a little bit? And he wrote down an action plan. Literally, here's the top 3 things you have to do. Come back in 6 months, let me know where you're at. I literally went back 6 months to the day and said, I've done all 3 of these things. So at that point, he saw I was serious. Yeah. And to this day, he's my mentor. And to this day, I can credit him for knowing how to interview for these organizations and being on these panels and being in some of the positions that I've had. Because I went from someone who was clueless to someone who had a mentor that saw it in me. Like, to your point, he saw that he has what it takes. He has a desire. He has a drive. He wants it bad enough. And like you kind of mentioned in one of our other episodes about the coach you had, right? And you weren't doing his homework. Yeah. It's the same thing. I think part of the process, if you show someone how serious and committed and dedicated you are, they'll pour into you a little bit.
Desire.
Yeah. So I guess what it comes down to is get around people who are doing what you're interested in. You know, I mean, I don't know if in your coaching career or maybe in your career as a pastor, I'm assuming you probably got around some pastors and coaches that were able to kind of give you some insights and how you can kind of excel a little bit in that
This
area.
had to be hard for you
Yeah.
because you were good at so many things naturally, from different sports to just being able to pick things up. You could have easily went into a direction that wasn't your purpose.
Mm.
So how did you navigate that?
The biggest thing, the hardest lesson that I had to learn was just because you can do it doesn't mean you're called to it.
Ooh.
Just because you can do it doesn't mean you're called to it. Just because I'm great and I could sell anything to anybody doesn't mean that I'm called to sell a house. Just because you can do what the next neighbor does or what somebody else does, it's understanding that your purpose is specifically generated for you. And you got to be able to build based off of the specification that God gave you and not what society has given you or what the next trend is giving you. And so you got to find that out. And so I think for me, it's understanding there's a lot of things that I'm gifted at. You hit the nail on the head. It's what is your magnificent obsession? In other words, what is something that nobody has to tell you to do? Nobody has to tell you to read. Nobody has to tell you to watch on YouTube.
Right.
I will watch documentaries and stories on success, biopics. I will watch those overcoming stories over and over and over and over again. Pursuit of Happiness is one of my favorite movies of all time. You don't have to ask me to find God in a film or find an overcoming story. I will watch those over and over and over again. I'm the guy crying over there because I can see myself in it. I can see somebody, or to see somebody overcome and win, it just really gets me just charged. And so, but I needed people around me to say, yo, you're gifted in a lot of that.
Right.
But where are you going to channel your focus? Where are you going to channel those things? I see that you can do all of these different things, but it's important for you to recognize, I think we talked about it in our last episode, right? There are multiple horses in front of you, but you can only ride one horse at a time. You can only drive one vehicle at a time. And so the challenging thing for me was I couldn't do what sounded like a good idea. I had to do what made my heart leap, made my baby leap. It was said that when Mary found out that she was pregnant with Jesus, she went to her cousin. And when she went to her cousin, Elizabeth, I believe her name was Elizabeth, and she came to her, John the Baptist was in her stomach, Jesus' cousin. And when Mary came and told her the news that she was pregnant, the belly and the baby, John the Baptist, inside of Elizabeth's stomach jumped. And so one of the ways that you're able to know and identify what your purpose and your calling is who do you get around that makes the baby jump and leap inside of you?
That's good.
Who do you get around that gets the creative juices flowing around your mind for you to see possibilities of where you're at? Who do you get around you? What rooms are you in that charges you and gets you to think at a different level than you've ever thought before? Those rooms, those incubators, those spaces are the spaces that are going to be able to allow that baby to jump inside you. And pay attention to the thoughts that you're thinking. Pay attention to the dreams that you have or the visions that you're seeing when you're in those rooms, because those are the hints and the indicators that you're playing with something right now. You sparking that fire. And so I think that for me, man, being around those rooms and being around people who I feel dumb around really helped me to identify certain areas.
Curiosity.
Bro, I was in a room today. There were probably hundreds of leaders, right, that are just crazy. And I got invited to go sit in the back green room and have lunch with them. I get back there and I'm in a room where the first thing I want to do is shut up.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we find vision and purpose when we actually are willing to be in a room where we feel the dumbest and we shut up. We're not trying to sound like the smartest person in the room. I'm not trying to add my 2 cents so you think I'm this. A lot of the things that I learned about my purpose came when I was just quiet.
Facts. Yeah. And I'll say another thing too. I think that a lot of times I think we look for, again, what comes easy. And it's like, oh, I'm going to find something that I excel in. I'm naturally athletic. I'm naturally fast. But like you said, it doesn't mean you should be a football player. It doesn't mean you should be an athlete, right?
Yeah.
But I think when you also find things that maybe you're not the best at, but you're committed to improving in them and you stick with it, that stickability you mentioned in another episode. When you find something that doesn't naturally come easy to you, but you're sticking with it until you've developed the skill, until you've developed the skill set to operate within that area. So I think that's another area too, because a lot of times in life you can dabble with stuff and what you're like, man, the heck with this, too dang hard. I can't get it. I can't figure it out. I'm not gonna stress myself out over it. But when you find those few things in life where you're like, I don't know anything about this. And I've heard you say this before, Dips, because Dips is like the guy we say can figure anything out.
Yeah. Oh,
You know, like dude will watch YouTube videos. He sent a message
yeah.
like 3 o'clock in the morning about how he figured out something on the website. Like, bro, you can't sleep. Dog. Like,
Nadia, like, who blowing your phone up?
Yeah.
Like, then just like, all right, I found this algorithm. Then, hey, yo, we gonna tap this into the show, and bam, the next thing you know, we bing.
That's what I'm saying. And I'll ask Dips, like, how do we blah, blah, blah? I don't know, but I'll figure it out, though. And 12 hours later, phone's blowing up because he figured it out. So I think a lot of times when you find kind of when that ignites that inside of you and you're kind of sticking with something that doesn't come natural, I think that's another good sign, too.
I think, too, also is what you're afraid of a little bit. I'm afraid of not being useful to my loved ones. I don't want to be able to not figure it out. I don't want to be able to not be strong enough to help you. I don't want to be able to not be able to help you if you need $1. I don't want to be able not to be able to help. And my dad always says that because, rest in peace, Miles. He said, you and Miles, he's like, we're sheepdog.
Yeah.
We like to take care of the flock.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and it's very subtle because you don't want to dabble into something where you start people pleasing because of a trauma. But I think things that you are fearful of, and then also things that really motivate you. I was watching JT Fox speak when I was a kid. It's like 2011. And he was 33 years old at the time. He was talking about how he had a lisp and a stutter. And when he was speaking, and I wanted to fight not speaking because Jeff was speaking. I was like, I don't want to just be doing what Jeff doing. But when he was up there talking, I was like, yo, this dude is like, it was like, nah, I want to be a speaker. And then, I came to you and you were able to help me out. And so it's, I think emotion, but true inspiration and like that itch that you feel inside, I think could lead you to your purpose as well.
That's really good.
One of the major things that I think when we talk about the idea of purpose, which is interesting, is how many people look for purpose out of trauma.
Yeah.
Or you build something out of hurt and not out of vision.
I got a story on when I did that.
To talk about it.
So I probably never shared this with a lot of people. So
hold on, wait. We got a Bros to Men exclusive right now.
I don't even think my parents know this, but when I was about 8 or 9, Pops and Moms was arguing. We were at the crib. Mom's on the crib at the time, and I don't even remember what they're arguing about, but Pops ended up leaving. And I remember I was in the room. He came in. He kissed me on the forehead. And he said, I'm going to be gone, but I'll come on weekends. Like, I'll come back. We'll, play basketball and stuff like that. And I started crying. And I remember when I was crying, I literally stopped. Like, 8 years old, I stopped and was like, bro, why are you crying? That's not going to bring Pops back. In order to bring Pops back, we have to be the best basketball player as humanly possible. Wow. Years go by. Basketball is my love. I love basketball. I'm going to the NBA. I am the best. Pulled up on Pops one day, and Pops said, bro, you could really play. You really learn this basketball thing, and you could play almost at any level. Dude, you're good. The moment he said that, I didn't care about playing basketball no more. Done. It completely went away at that moment.
Why?
Because I had created a false purpose based on what I think what would bring a connection for me and my Pops. And I ended up thinking that I loved basketball, but it wasn't that. That was just how we hung out because he
guys bonded
was my
over
trainer, and we bonded over basketball.
How would you tie that to people and their purpose?
So I call that experience a number 2 experience, an emotional experience that makes you create a life sentence. What we talked about in past episodes, where that life sentence for me, because you got to think of it from a kid's perspective. This is what I need to do to make my dad happy, right? And then when you get better at something, it makes you happy because you're getting good. I'm cooking people. I hoop. This is my purpose. I'm good at it. I'm gonna play at a high level.
Mm.
No, man, I was just doing that because that's how I hung out with my dad. And, I love my dad. And so a lot of people make a life sentence because they decided they needed to do something or chase a job or chase whatever goal because that's what they thought made someone that they love and really cared about happy.
So what do you think the mindset needs to be behind finding your actual purpose? So you mentioned like your mindset behind basketball was because if I get good at this,
Mm-hmm.
then my dad will want to spend time with me,
Mhm.
and that's how what we'll bond over,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the mindset to actually discovering your purpose? Like what's the mindset when you walk into it?
The reason why it's so hard is because that thought of basketball being my purpose was unconscious until I did the reading and realized it.
So you realized years
I
later why you
realized
were
when I
pursuing
was an
basketball.
adult why, yeah.
Mm.
I realized even after not even caring about playing no more, reading books and realizing what these experiences happen and creating life sentences, I went back and looked back at what number one and two experiences that might have created my identity.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people create false identities in order to survive the situations that they're in,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And that's not really you.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I realized this process, I went back and was like, oh, I think that way because of that. That ain't really me. Oh, I think that way because of that. And I did the work on myself and I was able to figure that out. And what's tough about it is until you know exactly how the mind works, you can't figure that out unless you work with a coach who knows how to do that.
So I've heard you say that, you say your purpose now is to teach and instruct 1 billion people, right? That so they can change their lives. You give them principles and mindsets and systems that they can implement to change their life. How and when did you land on knowing that was your purpose?
Like-minded. Like-minded. There's
Which
no
is what? Like explain because people who don't know like
when we
minded
were
was.
younger, we always felt like we were blessed in order to help others. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
it wasn't for
Right.
us. So we created
Right.
YP, Young and Prosperous. I was actually at the gym. So when somebody tattoos, Chinese guy, he was like, prospering peace, young prosperous. He's
Yeah.
like, like, I was like, nah, that's what we just did for tattoos. But
Right.
we
We all got it too.
Hey,
Yeah.
yo.
we always wanted to serve. That's why law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
that was always the inside inclination. Just when we did like-minded, I realized like, oh, if I learn to speak and learn to tell stories, I can do this on a big scale. And we got the internet. So I was like, I can help a lot of people instead of just a few people here. And then I think that's when I truly realized like, yeah, I wanna help
So I'm trying
as
to
many
walk
people
through
as I
this
can.
because I feel like
It's tough.
we're getting somewhere though.
Mhm.
And I almost want to say that you said you discovered it at like-minded.
Mhm.
And the structure of like-minded was all these people who had similar values, who
Mhm.
had similar beliefs and similar interests
Mm-hmm.
would come, and one of us would tell a story, and Justin as well, right? Justin would prepare a message that we would all take away from.
Mhm.
And I almost want to ask this because what I'm thinking, Dips, is that I remember you would get up there and you would speak as well. And for you to say you confirmed that was your purpose at like-minded, I almost want to bet the reason was because you saw the results. And I think that when you got on that stage and you spoke for the first time and you saw the heads nodding and you saw the people taking the notes,
Yeah.
I think in your mind you said, okay, I can get results. And that impact I want to make, I can really make it. It's really happening. So is it
And
safe to say that that's what happened?
1,000%. And that's when I changed as well. That's when I grew up as well.
So maybe when it comes to seeking this purpose thing, what are you getting results in? What are you putting the work in
Boy.
that's also making an impact elsewhere?
Yeah.
And I think this is my personal opinion, but I think purpose has a greater impact than just on a self level. I think when we find our purpose, we realize that what we're passionate about also makes an impact in others.
You know, Maslow talks about the hierarchy, but at the top where he talks about transcendence is when you have so much in abundance that you help others. And he talks about climbing the ladder to get to that point, but we were at the bottom,
Yeah.
but we still put our brains like we were at that point. Like, how can we help others? And if life is about helping others, what is it that you want to do, or what gifts that you have
Okay.
that's going to help others?
So we getting somewhere now, because I think when we talk about purpose, a lot of times we can sum it up in a way that says, like, it's why God made us and why God put us here. And it's our job to figure out why.
Love thy neighbor.
Yeah. So it's like, why are we here? What is that purpose? Why did God put me here? What is that thing that I'm supposed to do or complete or fulfill in my time here on earth? So to me, it almost sounds like a purpose is to make some type of larger impact or a greater impact.
Yeah.
Something
I
bigger
mean,
than
when
you.
you,
It's not just something that fires you up, but it's like the skill set that you have that fires and makes it up. And
it's got to impact somebody else. If the only thing that you're envisioning is what you can get and how much accolades you're going to make, that's not purpose.
Yeah.
When you talk about purpose, it's how is somebody's life going to be better because I was here?
You're hitting the nail now, bro. Yeah.
Like, how is somebody's life going to be transformed because I started that company that solved a need? I love how the Jewish people think, man. There's this incredible book, Business Secrets of the Bible, by Rabbi Daniel Lapin, one of the greatest business books ever. But he talks about how in the Jewish community, they understand one of the most noble things you can do is actually start a business. Like, even when you look at charity, everybody, this like, oh, we give back. We're going to give back. Now we're successful. We're going to give back. He says, why are you giving back as if you stole something?
Yeah. Give.
You create when we ask God to bless us with wealth, when we ask God to bless us with influence, it's because we've lived in such a way that we've impacted the people around us so much that people are willing to pay whatever money it is for that service, or they're willing to do whatever it takes to be around you because you serve them at the highest level possible. And so when we ask God for increase, his question is, again, how is that going to bring glory back to my name, though? How is that going to show somebody that when you look at from Genesis to Revelation, you look at the life of God, it's a story of him reaching down to people who have messed up time and time again to give them the opportunity to elevate to the purpose that he has. It's the reason why Jesus came. He came to take those who were disconnected from our Heavenly Father and that love and our lineage of who we are, and reconnect us to a Father's love, to give us wisdom, knowledge, understanding. And we'll tap on this, but I think that you said something that was so massive, and it comes back to it, is if I'm asking God for my purpose, what I'm really asking is who did you put me on this earth to impact?
That's it.
Who did you put me on this earth to make a difference in? Who did you put me in this earth to be able to influence their life to become better because they were either experiencing something within our company or experienced something with an interaction with me? How did somebody's life get better? You said something where oftentimes we ask God to bless what we're doing instead of asking God. I've heard it said like this: instead of asking God to bless what you're doing, do what God is already blessing. I'm going to say that again in the camera so y'all see that.
Come on.
Instead of asking God to bless what you are doing, do what God is already blessing.
Yeah.
Cam says you're going to know that God is blessing an area in your life because there's fruit. The Bible says you will know a man by their fruit, because a good tree can't bear bad fruit and a bad tree can't bear good fruit. And so where are the areas in your life that you are being blessed? Where are the areas in your life where you're finding favor? Where are the areas in your life where God is bringing like-minded people around you? That is a big indicator that you are in the area or the arena where God is calling you to be, that's going to bring you the greatest impact on this earth for your time that's here. I tell my clients this. Here's a question. I'm going to look back at the camera for this question because this question will change and save some of your lives. At the end of your life, when you stand before God, our creator, and he plays back your life and he asks you to give an account for your life, what do you want him to say to you about your life here on earth? And it cannot be, well done, thou good and faithful servant.
Mm.
What do you want God to say to you about your life when you're at the end of your life? I'll give you mine. When I stand before God, I don't want to hear him. I mean, he can say a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
But I want to hear him say to me, thank you for showing my children who they are.
Mm.
That's what I want to hear. That's what drives me in everything that I do. Am I going to point people to their purpose and their identity?
Yep.
Am I going to point people to them being the highest version of themselves? That's why I became a coach. That's why we became motivational speakers. That's why I became a pastor, because I cared enough about people that I didn't want to leave them where they were at, and I wanted to point them to the highest level that God has for them. And so when we talk about this idea of purpose, Cam, I love how you brought that up, bro. That where are the areas that comes naturally for you,
Yeah.
that is not a hindrance. That is not a hindrance. You don't have to try to be this. You naturally are this. And you'll know that it's purpose because you don't have the whole picture.
Mm.
You know that it's purpose because you don't have the whole thing. So even though I love speaking, and even though I was great at being around people, but I had to put work, I had to study, I had to build, I had to read books, I had to be around people to be able to do that. So I think one of the big misconceptions, like you talked about, is just because you're in your purpose doesn't mean that you got the whole package.
Yeah.
When it comes to purpose, some assembly may be required.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna come with the bike out the box
Right.
and be ready to go. You got to go through some hell. You got to go through some ish. You got to go through some disappointments. And I feel like sometimes God allows us to go through the hardest challenge in our life to see if what we say we want is really what we want.
And if it's your purpose, you will.
Mm.
You want, and there's nothing that's going to stop it. So there was something that was interesting that I think you guys have stepped out for a minute. And Solomon, you had said something in regards to purpose. You talked about it in one of our other episodes briefly in between the intermission about what stops us and what robs us of time. But you said something that was so brilliant about knowledge. How does knowledge play into purpose? And what role does that play in helping somebody discover purpose?
Well, what I was talking about at the time was that a lack of knowledge is something that wastes time, because we need to learn to utilize time in our favor. So, um, when you're developing your purpose, it takes that knowledge to say, okay, how can I get these three things done faster? And that's an experience thing, and that's something that you have to go out and learn.
Mm.
And so, that's something that I have personal experience with in this business. I mean, I don't make any money if I have to, take an hour to produce a podcast and then take 3 hours to edit it. I wouldn't make any money. So it's like, how can I be efficient and do everything within the scope of the podcast, within the time that we're doing here,
Mm.
switching cameras and putting names on the screen, all those things, so that when I'm done, I'm able just to go in and then just say, well, okay, let me do some quick edits. Let me make sure that the sound sounds good. Let me get it out to the client so they can upload it the same day or the next day. That's how I have to. But that was a process of learning. And, I love that we're talking about purpose, because one of the ways that, you really discern your purpose is like finding a common denominator. And it sort of goes into what Roy was saying, that, you sort of have to be able to say, okay, what am I doing well? And I look at all the things that I've done and the things that I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to realize what is the common denominator.
Wow.
And, people say, well, wow, you do podcasts, you listen to podcasts. I don't listen to any podcasts. I don't. I was a car stereo editor magazine for 10 years. Well, I don't even really like car stereo. And so when it really came down to it, I realized what I liked doing was putting things together, creating systems that work for people, that help people. And that's what I enjoy. And I sort of see myself as like, like a battery, like an empowerer. That's how I do. People
Yeah.
come in and they want to come in with the desire to, share their knowledge with the world, share their creativity. I take away all of the obstacles and allow them to do that. And I love that. And so I feel like when you talk about finding the things where God is blessing you, when I look at my life, that's where I'm being blessed. Now,
Yeah.
am I making the money I want to make right now? Not yet. But in terms of the fulfillment I have, and I'll tell you guys are in your 30s, 37, 30, when you get to your 40s and you get into your 50s, the word fulfillment is going to mean so much.
Boy,
It's
you
gonna
already
mean-
jumping. Boy, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's
Sal.
gonna be more
Yeah.
more than success, more than money.
Yes.
Fulfillment is gonna be the word that just drives you, and so that's where I feel right now I have the most fulfillment I've ever had in my life.
I love that.
Man.
I love that. And then I was thinking too, like as we were kind of discussing and going through this, I think we've been talking about purpose from a lens or a standpoint of like finding this thing you're going to be great at and excel in and make money at and go home happy because you're getting all the results that you want. But I think something I've realized too now at 37 years old, that sometimes your purpose, when you pray for your purpose, it can be just to be used by God. And I think I think a lot of times our purpose can be just for God to use us as a vessel and as a piece to show others what's possible and to show others what he can do. And I know for me, with my situation and some of the challenges I've had, like with the medical stuff, you guys know my story and I've shared my story. There was nothing adding up that equaled me getting a transplant. Everything that I attempted to do, everything that I exhausted efforts in never worked out.
Yeah.
And I remember just one of my prayers during that time more than anything was, God, let me beat this. And 2, use me to show others what you can do.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, I feel, if every business I start, if every job I go to fails and fires me, I've showed people what God can do when it looks like you have nothing going your way, when there's nothing
Boy.
in your favor. And honestly, like I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Like I can literally say my purpose was to show others what a dire situation looks like when you have nothing but your faith.
Yeah.
And God used me to show others what he can do when you're in that dire situation.
Threw you in the furnace, turned it up 9 times hotter,
That's it.
and then pulled you through to show people what's possible.
It
Because
didn't even smell like smoke.
didn't even smell like smokes. Because God uses the foolish things to
That's what
show
I'm
the wise
exactly.
what they think
Exactly.
they know.
So I think the takeaway is
Yeah.
that purpose and being used could look different for all of us.
Bro, the fact that you said that, I think you culminate at the end of the day when I was in my prison, I said, God, if you can just use me.
Come on. Yep.
That's
don't-
the most powerful prayer.
I don't care what it looks like. I don't care
It's scary.
how or
It's
when.
scary
It's
prayer.
a scare. And that's when you know you've reached a new
It's
level of
a
purpose, right?
Scary prayer because you don't know the outcome.
Yeah.
Dude, you don't know how many times, like even now in my life, people look at my life and they're like, oh, wow, you're doing this and this. And I tell them, man, I don't even know what God is going to do, but here's what I know. The more I wake up in the morning and I spend time with God, at the end of the day, we shared this story, dude. I'll never forget this, Doc. This mess was so powerful. And I love how you said that, Cam. There was a glass maker and they're trying to figure out how to make this glass. And so he would come out and he would take this glass out and he would take it out, he would blow it and put it back in and then put it in cold water. He would take it out, blow it and put it back in the furnace, heat, bring it out, put it in cold water, take it out. And the guy who's watching them make glass, like, yo, man, why do you keep doing it? Like you're putting it in cold and you're putting it in hot and you're putting air in it. You like, what's going on? Like, how do you know the glass is ready? And the glass maker said, when I can see my reflection in it. And I think when it comes to us being used by God and when can we be ready, God is saying, can I see my reflection in you? Everything that you're going through in your life, all of the trials that's happening in your life, everything that you're feeling right now, God is saying, I know you're ready for what's next when I can see myself in you. And I think that statement, William McDowell has a song that says, I give myself away. And that song is so you can use me. Like that song, boy, if I could sing, I give
That song
myself
breaks me
away.
down every time,
So,
bro.
right?
Yeah.
Can use me, I give myself away. And that song is the highest form. Watchman, he said this, and I'll we'll land this plane with this. With this question, but Watchman Nee said this. Watchman Nee, an old um, Chinese just minister, wrote hundreds of books. The boy is bad. Back in like I think the 30s, like the dude was old, like even probably older. He wrote this book called Secrets of Spiritual Power by Watchman Nee. And he says real growth and real change in the moment that God really uses you is when you understand this. God, for you, I can do nothing, but through me, you can do everything. God, for you, I can do nothing, but through me, you can do everything, which means, like you said, Cam, the goal of our life is to make sure that we are such a pure, like a clear conduit
Yep.
that God can say, yo, I'm giving you this business idea, boom. God says, yo, can I trust you with 5 kids that are challenged with different things? They got special mindsets of how their minds work, but can you be faithful to those 5? And when it comes to purpose, big is subjective.
Yeah.
What's big?
Yeah.
Big could be you pastoring a church of 20 people. Big could be you having an organization or a company and you've got one employee, but that one employee is able to have a lifestyle and raise their family.
Yep.
Big could be 10,000 for one. So big can be subjective. So I would say that when it comes to purpose, don't let the smoke and what everybody is showing you of what is big get you to feel like you're out of your purpose. Being content, not complacent, but being content with where God has you, being content with saying, God, what I'm doing, however it is, I'm going to give you glory in all the wins. I'm going to give you glory in all the losses. And if you see fit to increase my life, then go ahead and do it. But I'm going to bring my best to the table. I'm going to leave the outcome to you. I feel like that's when you step into a new realm of purpose.
I agree.
As we think about that.
I agree 100%. Just to like piggyback on that a little bit, I think you kind of know when you're operating within your purpose because there's a form of surrendering that takes place.
Boy, Pastor Cam,
There's a
you better
form.
stop.
There's a form of surrendering that takes place because you know you're now operating within that realm. You now know you're in that purpose. So it's like I no longer care about the outcome and the things that I can control and the things that I want because I know I'm being used in that space and in that moment. And I think that's a telltale sign of when you know I'm operating within my purpose now because I've fully surrendered to the outcome that God wants when you're in that space.
We can only do so much ourselves. We
That's
can
it.
only lift so much weight. But when you surrender,
Come on.
you can lift that God weight.
God weight. And Jeff says that all the time. Why are you lifting God weight? Why are you trying to lift God weight, right? That leads to disappointment. Like, I'll handle that.
Let him lift that, bro.
I just got to be under there looking like I'm moving.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? That's that spotter.
That's that spotter.
You're
Yeah.
going to feel that pressure.
Mhm.
He's gonna allow you to do it. But when it gets to the point to where you're breaking out, where you can't go anymore, that's when God comes in and he lifts that weight. When you can't do that, when you're there, you're in that place where you're struggling with that weight,
Right.
you're struggling with trying to do it. That's when God says, "Okay, come on, okay, I got you."
Come on.
And I love what you said in that depth. What would you say, man, as a final word that you would say when it comes to being able to find purpose, being able to recognize purpose, being able to surrender to purpose? We talk so much, fellas, this could be like a 3-4 part series.
Man,
Solomon over there dropping gold nuggets over there like, good
Right.
Lord. But Dips, what would you say when it comes to purpose that would be a tangible walk away for somebody who's watching this?
I would say, just going back to what I said earlier, is what is inside of you that no matter what you feel existentially, like it's just you, like it's this voice, this feeling, this inspiration that leads you to things you can't not do. And follow that and do stuff.
Yeah.
And as you do stuff, you'll be guided, you'll be molded, you'll be shaped. The next thing you know, man, you be rocking stages with 2,000 people looking around like, yo, this is wild.
Wild.
You be like, this is crazy, man. But
Yeah.
Real.
as long as you just lock in and I guess surrender, because you gotta steer that boat You got to get in the water and just trust the water's gonna take you where you're gonna go.
Good Lord.
Yes, sir.
Well, listen, I don't even want to talk anymore after that.
Nah.
I feel like we had a holy moment while we were here on this podcast. And so, man, if this blessed you guys, make sure that you comment. If there's a realization that you made, something that was really special that spoke out to you, or if you guys are in the comments, type in, man, I'm ready to talk
Yeah.
about you're ready to
Or
step into
what's
that
what's purpose look
right?
like to you?
What's purpose look
Yeah,
like?
you don't have to agree with us. Let
Yeah.
us know.
Yeah.
You know, what's it look like?
Yeah, if it's going to be different. Like you said, it's going to look different.
For all
You
of
may
us.
have different mindsets, and we want to hear what you have to say. But with
Mhm.
that being said, we want to tell you, thank you. Thank you for being in the lab with us. Thank you for rocking with us. This is the Bros to Men Show. I'm Jeff.
Cam.
Dips.
Hey, we'll see you next
Sir.
time. Peace.